Hi, and welcome to the Virtual College Exploration sponsored by StriveScan and the Wisconsin Association for College Admissions Counseling. My name is Susie, and I'm super excited to have you all join us tonight for this topic about finding your fit in a virtual world. So I just want to run through a few logistics before our panelists start tonight. You all have the ability to ask questions using the Q&A button on your screen, and panelists will be able to answer those throughout. For all participants, your camera and microphone are automatically off, so the chat function is the best way to have your questions answered. Obviously, this is one of our topics this week, and there are many more sessions throughout the rest of this week. You can sign up. And then after we finish the recording tonight, or the webinar tonight, a recording will be available later on if there was things that you missed or want to rehear again from any of our panelists. So thank you all for joining us, and I will kick it off to our panelists. Take it away. Thank you.
Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome. My name is Julie Nelson. I'm a Regional Recruitment Director at Xavier University in Cincinnati, Ohio. And on behalf of our panel, we want to welcome you to our presentation tonight. Does everybody want to introduce themselves really quickly so that folks know who will be talking tonight? Mary Kate, you want to take it?
Yes, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Mary Kate Smith. I'm an Assistant Director of Admissions at Lawrence University, which is a small private liberal arts college and conservatory of music in Appleton, Wisconsin. We have about 1,500 undergrad students. I'll send it over to Thomas.
All right, hi everyone. My name is Thomas Jong. I'm an Assistant Director for Admissions at the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh. We are a medium-sized campus with just over 10,000 students, public four-year university in the city of Oshkosh in Wisconsin.
Hi everybody, my name is Susan Zarwell. I'm the Director of College Guidance at the University School of Milwaukee. It is a PK through 12 school located just north of the city of Milwaukee, and we have about 410 students in our high school.
Excellent. Well, we want to give you just some things to think about tonight as you start your college exploration, as you start your college search and selection process. We really think that this whole concept of finding your fit boils down into three areas: into an academic fit, into a social fit, and to a financial fit. And so we are going to give you some tips and tricks and some things to think about as you start to realize, or as you start to discern perhaps what kind of school might be the best fit for you. Mary Kay. So as you start to think about that whole academic fit, if you want to, it's fine. You really want to start to think about not so much what do I want my major to be. And I think that's where a lot of students get hung up. They get nervous that they don't know exactly what they want to study in college, or sometimes what to even call that academic program. And so I think for students, I always encourage them to do a little bit of self-reflection first, to say, what am I good at? Where do I feel that my strengths lie? What kinds of things can I envision myself doing? And so I think as you look at that, not so much to say, does this school have this specific major with this specific name, but to really say, what area of study interests me the most? I think it's much more helpful for a student when they come up to my table at a college fair, instead of just saying, I want to major in neuroscience. That's a hot one lately. But so to come up and say, I'm interested in science, I'm interested in psychology, what could I do with those things at your institution? Because we may not, and truthfully at Xavier, we don't have a major called neuroscience, but we certainly do have ways to prepare yourself for graduate study in neuroscience. So that's where I can say, here's this list of majors and minors. Here are these things that we can help you study at Xavier or at any institution so that you can know what that path is for those schools. And know that there's a lot of flexibility no matter what kind of institution you go to in combining things. You may know, hey, I really love communication, but I also have a passion for music or for science or for accounting. You can probably combine those things in a way that you didn't think was possible. You know, I'm a public relations major with an accounting minor. That's going to give you a leg up for a lot of different careers because you're going to have the communication skills as well as the computational skills. So know that that's part of finding that academic fit. The other question I would ask certainly is what kind of assistance is given to students who are completely undecided? And you may not even be called undecided. You know, even at our institutions, you're exploratory at Xavier, you're multiply interested at Lawrence. And so it's no big deal when you're looking at schools and when you start to have those conversations with admissions representatives to say, I don't know. Because we can sometimes say, well, you know what? I don't know is a good place to be, and here's how we will help you. So I would say don't get so caught up on what the name of the major is or the fact that maybe you don't even know what your major should be, but that, you know, here's what my wheelhouse is. Here's what I'm good at. Another way to find that academic fit is to look at where you stack up against that institution's middle 50%. A lot of students will come up to me at a college fair and say, what's your average GPA? Or even worse, they'll say, what's the minimum GPA I need to get in here? Maybe not the best question to ask, but even if you come up and ask me one of those questions, what I'm going to tell you is, here's the middle 50% of our student body. And what that means is we take a snapshot basically of the class that we've just admitted and say, what is the highest GPA? What is the lowest GPA of the students that we admitted? And then break that into that magical bell curve that we all learn about so that the middle 50%, the bulk of the students are represented in a range of scores and in a range of GPAs. So that, for example, at Xavier, ours is between a 3.2 and a 3.9 is our middle. So if you have a 3.7, you're like, hey, I'm pretty much the middle of the middle. You know, I'm gonna find a place where students think like me, students study like me, students, you know, process academically like me. Maybe you're on the high end of that. Maybe you're like, Julie, I've got a 4 or 5. Awesome. There's still 25% of our students that fit in that category. So you'll find a home in an honors program or with other students who are looking for an academic challenge. Or maybe you have a 3.1 or a 2.9. Does that mean you won't get admitted? No, might be a little more of a struggle, but certainly we can support you there. And so looking at that middle 50% helps you understand the kind of academic situation or the academic climate that you'll be getting into. A lot of us, particularly here in the time of COVID, have gone to a test optional admission process. And so does optional mean optional? Absolutely. I've had a lot of students ask me, you know, Julie, what does that mean? Does it mean that I'm going to get looked at differently because I don't have a test? Absolutely not. If a school says they are test optional, you can either choose, hey, I took a test, I wasn't super excited about the score, I don't want to send it, or I haven't had the opportunity to take a test because every time I go to take it, that gets canceled or the facility is closed. That's fine. You can choose to go test optional. That's part of our admission process. You can go from there. The other thing to think about as you do that kind of self-reflection is to really say, how do I learn best? And for some of you, you could say, you know what? I love virtual learning. I love staring into my computer screen. I can learn everything I need to learn at home. Others of you say, oh my gosh, I need that personal attention. I need that one-on-one connection with a professor. I need a classroom where I can raise my hand. Which way is better? There isn't a better. It's which way is better for you. And so knowing that going into this process is also going to help you kind of get a feel for what kind of school fits me best. Some schools are going to have more of a blend than others where you'll walk into it and say, 3 of my 4 classes this semester, I'm in a classroom of 20 or less. That last one, I'm in a lecture hall of 200. Others may be weighted more one way or the other. So that's up to you to make that determination based on your own learning style to say, how is this going to be a good match for me? And then finally, you know, I would love to say, once you get to college, everything's magical, everything just clicks into place, but that's not the case. We live in a real world, right? And so if you get into your program, even if it's a class in your major and you feel like, whew, this is going too fast, I'm struggling a little bit, I'm not sure that this is really where I want to go or really what I want to study, know that there are more people to help you on a college campus than you even knew were on that college campus. And so it really boils down to you being a good self-advocate and going to your professor and saying, hey, I have a question. Or finding that tutor for that class that you know you need to pass in order to graduate, but that you're still not quite getting the hang of. Those kind of supports are there. What if you get halfway through sophomore year and you realize, you know what, I thought I wanted this major, this isn't what I wanted at all. That's what your academic advisors are for, to help you cobble together what you've got so that you can still graduate on time. You know, if it's just, hey, college is really hard and I need somebody to talk to, there's counselors, there's helpers, but know that that's all part of finding your fit too. Nobody's going to grab you by the hand and say, oh my gosh, we haven't seen you in class in 3 days. A lot of that is going to be on you, but certainly when you are ready to ask for that help, that support is going to be there, because ultimately you're going to college to get that education, to give you the skills and connections that you need to find that first job. And so academics is where I think most students start as they look at college, but keep in mind that for most students who are taking a full college schedule, you're only in a classroom about 3 hours a day. So that gives you about 21 moderately supervised hours to try and fill. And so that's where that social fit comes in. So I'm going to let Mary Kate talk a little bit about the social part of fit.
All right, thank you so much, Julie. And I apologize for the mix-up with the slides there. My computer to not want to let me go back, only forward, so I will be careful. Yeah, as you consider your social fit or your campus environment fit, the first thing I think is really important to consider is the location. And that's actually a little more complicated than it sounds. You want to think about, is that school located in a city environment or in a small town, or is it completely remote? Because those will give you a really different experience. And again, there's no better or worse, right or wrong. It really just depends on what you're looking for. Some students want to have access to city life to be able to see shows and you know, go to restaurants and have a lot of activity, whereas some students feel like a campus that's really isolated will allow them to focus on their studies and really dive into what they're looking to do. The next question with location is, how far is that school from your home? You might be looking to try something totally new from what you're used to, or you might want to be a little closer to your family. Thinking about things like, if I'm going to be a music major and I want my parents to come see my concerts, are they able to do that? So how far from home is really an important question. The next question that's kind of related to distance from home is, how easy is it to get to that campus? If you're going farther from home, you probably want to look if there are airports or bus stations or train stations nearby, or think about how long the drive is and whether you have access to a car. So you want to be planning not only to move into campus, but keeping in mind that you'll have breaks that you'll want to go home for, and how easy will it be for you to head home on those breaks. The last thing I think to consider with location is, what's the climate like? We're talking to students in Wisconsin here, so if you just love your Wisconsin winters, maybe staying nearby is great for you. If you've just always dreamed of the sunny lifestyle, maybe you want to look far from home in places like Florida or California to have a really different kind of climate. But that can make a difference in your college experience for sure. I think the next thing to think about is the size of a school. Large schools and small schools will have a really different feel to them, and both have pros and cons. Big schools tend to have a lot of resources, have a lot of variety in terms of not only the academics that they offer, but the types of clubs and sports and extracurriculars that are available. Smaller schools tend to have a little bit more of a sense of community. You'll kind of get to know people and you'll see the same familiar faces. So if that's something that you're looking for, you might want to go for a smaller option. Smaller schools also, while they might have less variety in terms of the extracurriculars they offer, they might be less competitive. So for example, if you're going to a Division III school, you might have an easier time making it on a sports team and continuing that from your high school experience, versus if you go to a huge Division I school that has a really competitive program for things like that. The next factor is residential life. It's definitely a great question to ask of how many students live on campus, or do students tend to live off campus after their first year? Also, just feel free to ask what dorms are like. You might even be able to do a virtual tour of a dorm to see what those dorms are like. As Julie said, you're going to spend a lot of your time living in your college experience, and you want to make sure it's a place where you're going to feel comfortable. So definitely ask what living options are like and what most students tend to do. The next item is finding your people. And this basically boils down to, are you going to be able to find friends? Do you see people on this campus that you feel like you would get along with and that you would want to be friends with? It also has to do with, are there clubs and activities or music groups and sports that you want to be a part of? Will you be able to pursue those things that you're passionate about? I would definitely spend some time thinking about the things that you enjoy most in your high school life and making sure that you have opportunities to continue those things in college. A similar note, but kind of the opposite end, is trying new things. Is there anything that you've always wanted to do, but maybe your high school didn't have access to? That's something you definitely want to ask colleges if they have opportunities for you to do that exploration so you can continue to grow. Study abroad is one way a lot of students like to kind of push themselves to expand their worldview and grow a little bit during college. So definitely ask about study abroad programs and see if those are options that would be appealing to you. Relationships with faculty are also really important. I would definitely see if you can ask some current students what relationships with faculty are like. Sometimes a good question to ask is whether there are more graduate students or undergraduate students and what that ratio is like. We want to make sure that your faculty will be available to you if you need to ask them questions or ask for help. So definitely that's a great thing to find out about at a school you're considering. And then the last thing on the list here is looking for opportunities to grow both personally and professionally. So in addition to those faculty relationships, you might want to ask what career services are like, what relationships with alumni are like, are there research and internship opportunities on campus or in the local community? Are there mentors available who can work with you? What kind of connections can you make on that campus that will help you in your life, during college and then beyond after you graduate as well? So that kind of covers some points in social or campus environment. And so now I'm going to pass it off to Thomas, who will tell you a little bit about financial fit.
Great, thank you, Mary Kate. And so obviously, certainly financial is another important aspect of trying to find fit. And so when we're talking about finances, I mean, realistically, from my own personal perspective, it's really what each individual student or family can afford or what they think is realistic for them. And so the one thing I always ask students and families to consider is not just to look at the price sticker on the websites or that the school is putting out, because there's so many different factors that go into finding what's the real price or what's the real cost of attending that college. And so, I mean, in terms of taking into consideration, you're looking at financial aid, you're looking at scholarships, you're looking at different types of things. And so, income-wise, and so when you're looking at costs, really think about what can I afford or what can my family afford realistically, in terms of whether that's a place that I can afford to go to or not. And so, just don't be afraid by the sticker price that says, oh, I'm going to rule that out automatically just because that school is so much more expensive just based on the sticker price. And so that's something to kind of think about and keep in mind as well when you're looking at fit and looking at costs and those type of things. The other thing is that certainly don't just automatically assume, if you're thinking that, well, I can't realistically afford to go to a more expensive school, and automatically think that a private school must be more expensive versus a public school. And so don't automatically rule those out, because the key thing is to really gather your information, ask questions, find out what's available in terms of scholarships, financial aid, and so that before you make those decisions, really find out what it is that what kind of financial package, what kind of aid you're going to be receiving. So the one thing I always certainly tell students is that is really about not so much where it's going to find the most costly place to go to, but finding the place that's going to help you graduate at best. And so certainly, like I said, the key thing is that don't automatically assume that it's just because it's a private school that it's going to cost more to attend there versus a public school. The important thing is to gather your information, find out what type of aid or scholarships available, and so that way you can make the most informed decision as to whether it is more costly at a private versus a public or the other way around. So Certainly something to kind of think about as well. And students and families, don't be afraid to ask questions. That's the one thing I encourage students and families to do a lot is ask questions. What's available? I mean, what type of scholarships available? What type of financial aid is available? What percentage of your students get get aid to help them with their schooling? And so that's the thing students, sometimes parents and students don't do enough of is asking. And not only that, but if you're getting scholarships, is it renewable? Is it a one-time scholarship? Is it renewable and renewable for how many years? So you know exactly going in what type of scholarships you're getting, if you are getting any, and then whether it's for 1 year only or whether 2 years, so you know how to budget yourself, you know how to plan for your college education. So those are important things to ask. And college people, folks are more than willing to work with you and happy to work with you to make sure that you have all the information you need to make that decision. So certainly ask questions, don't be afraid. And so that way, like I said, the more information you have, the better you can make that decision, the more likely you're going to find that place that you go to or the place you choose to go to a better fit for you. And not only that, just also talk to your families. Families, talk to each other. Students, talk to your families, ask questions, have a budget in mind about what can I afford? What can we afford as a family, as a student, realistically? So be realistic and says, hey, this is the budget we're looking at. This is how much it's going to cost to attend this school versus that school. What realistically can we afford? And so certainly that's going to be really helpful for this, so that you know going in, this is what I can afford. I mean, I look at it as car shopping. If I can only afford a car at a certain price, and I have that in mind, that's where I'm going to be looking at. Otherwise I could end up going shopping and end up buying a car that's a lot more expensive than what I could realistically afford to, and it's going to cause a lot more stress on me. And so really that's kind of how I look at college, looking at financial costs of college selection is looking at really going in with a plan, knowing what you can afford, and kind of stick to that plan as well, after considering all the different scholarships, all the different aids and all that stuff that you could potentially get. And then certainly students apply for FAFSA, apply for financial aid. That's the one thing I think I work really hard with students on, is to try to complete that financial application on time. Obviously for seniors, that application always opens October 1st. But the thing is that you want to apply for it as soon as possible, especially if your college that you're going to or considering has a priority filing deadline. You want to make sure you get everything in by that priority filing deadline so you can get the most funds available to you. We have many students who don't apply by that, or applying really late and then end up not getting all the funds they could have received if they had applied on time. And so certainly students, I really stress about applying for that early on in the process. And then, like I said, yes, loans are available for students and can be helpful, but also be realistic that these are money that you do have to pay back students. And so they're not meant for you to take on spending sprees or say, hey, I'm eligible for $5,000. I'm going to take out the whole loan, because you do have to pay it back. And if it's more than what you can afford, you got to be realistic about it too. Cannot afford to go there if I'm going to have to take out all these loans in order for me to attend that school. So be realistic about the process. And so I think in terms of financially, you have to take into consideration all these different factors. But the most important thing is that before you rule out any school, gather all the information you need so that you can make the best informed decision for yourself and your family that way. Okay. And so then next I'm going to turn it over to Suzanne to talk a little bit about prioritizing.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, so Julie, Mary Kate, and Thomas have all mentioned a variety of things that you can look at, and there is a lot to study on a website. But I think that going through the process of applying to college and searching out colleges, finishing that application, clicking submit, this is really, it's like a project-based class in adult decision-making. All of the same kind of thinking styles that you bring to this process are the same ones that will serve you well in all adult decisions that you make. From picking a job, to picking a place to live, to picking a career, to determining whether or not you want to get married and have kids. And if you do decide to do that, where you want your kids to go to school, there are so many ways that all of the decision-making process that you go through now will serve you well long after college. So it helps to think through that a little bit, and knowing that no matter how your process ends up, it's a useful one to you. And parents, this can be useful to you as well in helping you establish some boundaries. Your job is not to secure a particular path or a particular outcome, but to help your child become a better decision maker overall. So I think the two major skills that come out of this, and looking at all the information that my colleagues have spoken about, the two major skills are pretty much project management and self-reflection. Being able to parcel out a lot of research over time, but also being able to look inside and see what actually matters. My colleagues have pointed out all the different places that you can be looking, but how do you make meaning out of all of that information? Thomas's metaphor about a particular car is useful. If you've only got a budget for a particular car, there's only certain models you're going to be looking at. The college process is in some ways sort of the same way. You can figure out what is just sort of like fancy bells and whistles and what are absolutely essentials. So yeah, as you're going through this, a good way to go to start is simply to look at the experience you've already been through. When you are transitioning to college, that is, it's fun, it's exciting, but there's also going to be some rough patches there. So you want to plan for a circumstance that's going to help you be your best when you're at your most confident, you're willing to take a few risks to put yourself out there and grow, but also when you're struggling a little bit and what's going to help you through. And so you want to take a look at the people and the programs, the outlets and the systems that help you through that. And really think about the classes that you've been through, what has been most rewarding and useful and genuine to you, what has been absolutely essential to your classroom success. Is it a particular relationship that you had with a teacher, with your peers, a study group, the fact that maybe you were involved in a faith community, or you went out running every day, or the fact that you could just sort of hide behind a little bit of a computer screen and you just listen attentively, or if you really had to lean in and have a conversation. Think about the things that led to your success, and also think about the things that made you want to try harder and put yourself out there a little bit more. Those are the features you're going to want to be looking for in the college that you attend. Understanding this about yourself can also help you figure out what your priorities are going to be in your college search process overall. For some folks, you may really know that, like, yes, this is absolutely what I would like to major in. This is definitely what I want to do. Here's my career path. But as Julie mentioned early on, undecided and not knowing is just as good a place to be. And it's totally fine to think that way. So if you are dealing with some degree of uncertainty, what helps you through that uncertainty? What are the things and the features that you need to work through that? How have you figured that out in the past? Talk with your teachers a little bit about this as well. Your high school counselor is also going to be tremendously useful to you. Go in and have a conversation with your high school counselor. They can be quite useful in helping you identify what your priorities are, help you understand how an outsider might actually see what your record shows in your application, and also how you might fit in outside the classroom as well, outside particular majors. I've drawn up a site here for you, and I'm going to give you the URL. We use a couple of things in our college guidance program that help students figure out what their guiding priorities should be. If you go to tinyurl.com/WACAC find your fit. So tinyurl/WACAC find your fit. You'll be able to get to a website that has a variety of different exercises on it. One of the books that we use is called College Match by Stephen Antonoff, and he has a great number of self-reflection surveys that are linked to there that he has made available on his site, and a number of other things to consider. So really, self-reflection is going to help you take advantage of all of the other things that you have heard about tonight. So Mary Kate, do you want to talk a little bit about the resources that are available to students?
Actually, I'm going to kick this one off. Certainly, as students start this process, and I know there's a Q&A in the, there's a question in the Q&A, Susan, if you could type the link. So if you want to take care of that, that's what I was looking at, sorry. Lots of websites out there. I would say probably not the best way to start this is just by Googling, what is the best school for? Because that best school, again, depends on what's important to you and what is the right fit. One of my favorite websites is kind of a start to the process is College Board's Big Future website, which is just a really robust search engine so that you can type in or pick from a list as many or as few options that you would like to really start to drill down on your search. Maybe you know distance is a huge factor, or maybe you know that size of school is a huge factor, or maybe you just have a couple of majors in mind. What are schools going to be a good match? Folks like me and Mary Kate and Thomas, we are going to be hugely important in your search, particularly now in the age of COVID, because we are the folks at those colleges and universities who know not only our stuff, know what we, all the facts and figures about our colleges, but because we work with students from Wisconsin, we know you too. We know your high schools, we know your school counselors. We can really be that go-between between what you know now and what we know to be true about our institutions. Again, even if you feel like, oh my gosh, I haven't applied yet, I don't know what questions to ask, sometimes just reaching out and saying, will you be doing a virtual visit at my high school? Or, do you have a program in animal science? I mean, whatever it might be, it seems like a really easy question that you should be able to find on a website. But quite frankly, we're here to guide you through this process. So whatever question you have, even if it feels kind of inconsequential in the moment, shoot that to an admission counselor. And if you visit the school's website, somewhere on that school's website, there's going to be a way to know exactly who that admission counselor is that works with you and your high school. And then finally, because so many of you haven't been able to take a test, we don't know who you are yet. In years past, when students would take an ACT or an SAT, we were able to get your name from those testing agencies. This year, it just really hasn't happened that way. So if there are schools that pop up in your search to say, you know what, I'm really interested in you, again, go back to that school's website, find that link to that information, and go ahead and fill out the form so that we can send you all kinds of magical goodies, whether it's through email or whether it's through snail mail.
A lot of students right now are interested in tours, and given the pandemic, it's really variable what types of tours are options at any given school. So we actually really recommend asking schools what they have. A lot of schools do have virtual tours. Some schools have a virtual tour that's guided live by a student. Some are explore on your own time. Some schools are offering limited outdoor tours, so it's definitely worth asking. I've talked to a few students who have had really good success doing a virtual tour and then combining that with walking around the campus physically on their own just to see what it looks like outside. And so you have that image in your mind of what the inside of buildings look like, but you also get to see the physical space. How far is it to get from one end to the other? What coffee shops are nearby? What's the environment like? So it's definitely worth checking websites regularly because tour options are shifting. And also, like Julie said, reach out to your admissions counselor. They have all the up-to-date information and they can tell you what options are available. I would also highly recommend connecting across campus. And what I mean by that is see if you can set up a chat with a current student or with a faculty member, or if you're looking at a sports team, see if the coach can connect you with a player on that particular team. The more people you talk to, you'll get a sense of what that campus environment is like. What are the people like that are there? And what kind of things do they keep saying? Because you'll find that if you ask a lot of people on a campus, what's the best thing about your campus? What do you like about it? You'll start to hear some recurring themes, and that'll give you a sense of what the vibe is at that campus.
And then certainly in terms of just that gathering information part of it, just don't be afraid to ask for what you need so that you can get the answers that you're looking for to find the fit that you're looking for as well. And so certainly students and families, don't be afraid to ask for things that you need to make that decision. whether it's a one-on-one meeting with a counselor. I mean, that, that may be virtually or maybe on campus or whatever that means, whatever that platform may be. If you need to talk to an admissions counselor, don't be afraid to reach out and ask for that. Ask for materials. If you want to get materials from that school. So say, hey, can I get a pamphlet about this particular area or that particular area, or just your view book that kind of explains to me a little bit more about your campus. And so I can see a little bit more about what you have and all that stuff. And so don't be afraid to ask for things that you need so that you can make that decision for yourself. Not only that, but also students, I know that this is a uncertain times, with a lot of uncertainties and things like that. But we understand that, that your grades, your activities, your test scores may be impacted by COVID and all this stuff. So I know there's a lot of concerns about that. I wasn't able to raise my GPA because of COVID, or I couldn't get my grades up and all stuff. We understand all that stuff. And so, certainly, don't worry too much about that stuff. That even though, yes, it's on your mind and it may be troubling to you, but also know that we understand that that this is a different situation, and we understand that all students have gone through some of these difficult times, and that the current situation does impact some of your ability to, whether it's your activities, can't get involved in the activities you want to do, or the grades that you were looking for, or take the test that you're looking for. So understand that we also know that, and we take that into consideration.
Thomas, I want to jump in and piggyback on that. This is something that I think high school counselors can be particularly helpful with. They understand the larger context that your record fits into. And as talking with your counselor and also with your recommending teachers about how you have contributed to a classroom environment. Maybe your teacher has also seen you in an extracurricular activity. Either they've been your coach or a club advisor, something like that. Having close conversations with those teachers who will be speaking on your behalf and can speak in a little bit more detail, that is going to be particularly useful for college admissions officers as well, to help tell your story and figure out how you are a potentially good match for a particular institution. So make sure that you've got those lines of communications open with your counselor and with your teachers who are writing on your behalf. Another thing that you can do is talk to your counseling office about alums who might be attending the institutions that you are interested in. They might be able to put you in contact with them, and they can talk about what the transition was like from your high school into this new environment. They should be able to give some good insight as well.
So thanks everyone for all this.
Mary-Kate.
Oh, I was just going to say, this has been some great information. I think now we'll switch over and jump into some questions. So I think Susan will read some questions aloud for us. But if anyone has additional questions, please feel free to put those in the Q&A. And while we're doing questions, I'm actually going to advance one more slide and put all of our contact information on the screen, just to give everyone a chance to copy that down if you'd like to have that to follow up later.
Okay, we don't have anything that's been brought up in the Q&A, but one question that I have for whichever of you would like to answer it overall. What is the first thing that you would recommend a student do beyond the admissions page of a website? Where is a particularly good place to look for your own institution if they really want to get a sense of what day-to-day life is like on campus?
What I would say, certainly, and that's a great question, Suzanne, is certainly, look at, not just the admission stuff, as you said, but look at some of our student, some of our stuff from student perspectives in terms of like Instagram or blogs that they put out there, and that they really talks about what it's like to be on campus, or what's been like for them as a student from their transition from high school to college, or some of the events or activities that they've been able to participate in that has helped them grow not only as a person, but also as a professional. So I think you really want to get a good perspective on what it's really like. Because I know sometimes students just say, hey, you're telling me this because you're staff on campus. But to get it from a student's perspective is really important. And so I would encourage them to look at the different blogs or that current students have put out there about the university, look at different YouTube videos to really kind of get a feel for, from students' perspective, what that campus is like.
I would also go to that school's website and Google their dining services. If you're going to go live on that campus, you might want to know what the food looks like. So, but also too, along with that, you might find that that school's got an Instagram account where students rate the food. So check that out too.
I think one page that's really fun on our website is the list of student organizations on campus. You can go and check out the list and then click on any of them to find out more about what that club does. And I think that's a great way to start imagining yourself involved beyond the classroom on a campus, just to see what students are doing in their free time.
Okay, thank you. One thing I'll add to that as well, Julie, your comment about food. If you have particular dietary restrictions, if you're diabetic or have celiac or anything like that, there are a number of groups that are highly active and that have college reviews about particular dining services, also accessibility issues and so on. So get in touch with professional organizations that deal with whatever conditions that you are working through, and they can actually be really quite helpful with that as well. All right, we did have a question come in. I'm someone with a huge interest in SpaceX and Apple, trying to change this world for the better, but I like to expand more than that, as in Mars and things. And so I'm wondering if California is a great location to go for that. Advice? All of my relatives that have been or are in college, they were in the East Coast. So any thoughts about California for somebody who is interested in Apple and SpaceX and sort of the more cutting edge tech? I don't know if you have any thoughts on that just from colleagues, but.
I would say that's a great question. The place that I would ask for any particular school, whether you're looking in California or anywhere else, is see if you can be connected with someone in career services to find out what kind of internships and research opportunities you would have. If you're trying to get in with a big tech company, a lot of times building those connections while you're still in college can be really, really helpful. So you want to find out if that school has alumni working in those companies, and if they have connections where you could start potentially doing an internship or research while you're still a student. But yeah, I think you could probably find a route to that career path in any state, but it's a matter of asking at that specific school how they can help get you there.
Okay, well, that's the question that has come in. Looking at what's left, only the few minutes that we have left, are there any last thoughts that you would like to offer to students and parents about how to best manage the process?
I will throw this in there. I am the mom of a college freshman. He just started at Xavier a couple of weeks ago. And so one of the things that I always encourage parents to do in this process is to be like the mama bird, right? And the more that we can allow our students to do in this process, the more we can kind of push them out of the nest in this whole college search and selection process, the better off they'll be when they're actually on that campus come that next fall. So look at it as a teaching moment, you know, allow your students to make some phone calls, which is the scariest thing for a Gen Zer to have to do, but let them make some phone calls, let them send some emails, let them ask some questions for themselves. Because I think at the end of the day, I get real nervous when the only person in the family that I've spoken to about the college process is mom or dad, or a trusted adult, and not the student at all. I wonder who's actually coming to campus. So parents, let your birds fly a little bit and know that once they get to campus, they'll just soar.
I'd add to that that for parents, it's actually really helpful for your children to hear from you about difficult decisions that you have faced and how you have had to make hard choices from time to time, and what helped you do that, and what were the guiding principles, and how did some of the decisions you've made over time help solidify what your guiding principles are.
I just want to add also that for students, that it's okay to ask for help. That asking for help does not mean that you're not as good as somebody else, or that you're seen as a failure. That it's part of being a human. And so and we all need help at various times. And so I think that's one thing that I've learned. I had to learn myself as well, is that it's okay to ask for help. And that if I'm struggling in a classroom or if I need support, that it's okay for me to reach out to get the help that I need to be successful. And you see that, you know, a lot of the most successful people are the ones that are constantly asking for help and reaching out for help. So don't be afraid to ask for help.
All right, that seems like a great place to end everything. It's 6:45 and the conclusion of the program. The best of luck to all of you.
Yes, students, thank you. Students and participants, thank you for being here. Thank you to our panelists. Just a reminder that there is a quick survey. So after you close your window, there's a quick 4-question survey. You can sign up for more sessions happening through this Friday. And a recording will be available later on WACAC.com. So thank you everybody for being here and have a great night.